I was so angry that my wife was cheating that I took all her clothes, wallet, and keys and left her in a hotel room with nothing but her bra. This is the story of what led to that and my learning of even more of her infidelity. My apologies for his length. My name is Phil and I'm 35. My wife Ellie is 34. We live in a large city on the East Coast. We met at a barbecue of a mutual friend 11 years ago. We sat most of the barbecue talking and getting to know each other. Ellie had just graduated law school and begun working at a large law firm and was studying to pass the bar exam. I was working at a regional computer company owned by my father. We do software and hardware sales and professional infrastructure services. Ellie and I dated on and off for about a year. Neither of us wanted to be tied down. We eventually stopped seeing other people, and about after a year, we became more involved and we started to see each other exclusively. For years from the time we met, we moved in together. We got married in 2018 and we've been happy. I bought a townhouse in a nice area of our city. No children for now, but we've been discussing it. Life was good. My company flourished during the time of the pandemic. Companies need the ability for their employees to work remotely. That required the technology that we sold. Ellie was thriving at the law firm and was now being sent to conferences 3 or 4 times a year. She said this was an easy way to catch up on the changes in the law and meet other attorneys from around the country. They might refer clients to an attorney in our states and vice versa. These conferences lasted a long weekend, usually Friday through Sunday. They were held at resorts in different cities around the country. Ellie left for one of these conferences on a Thursday, July 6th. This one was at a resort just outside of Santa Fe, New Mexico. Here's where the crazy starts. I decided to surprise her at the resort. The resort was a nice one. A spa, gym, pool, and they had a casino. There was plenty of stuff for me to do during the day while she was at meetings. At night, we could explore Santa Fe. This was a place neither of us had been to before. I left for Santa Fe on Friday the 7th. The travel was over 6 hours long. I rented a car and arrived at the family resort finally a little after 6. I went to the reception desk and asked the receptionist for Ellie's room number. I explained I was her husband and here to surprise her. The woman at the desk told me she couldn't give out room numbers, but she'd call my wife to see if it was okay. She asked for Ellie's name, and I gave it to her. The receptionist typed it on her computer and looked up at me confused. She says she had no one registered under that name. Well, that can't be right. I asked her to check Ellie's maiden name. That is the name she used at work. Again, that name didn't come up. I asked her where the bar meetings were being held and maybe I could find her there. Again, she looked at me confused. She said that they had 4 groups for conventions but no legal conference. She told me it's possible the event was at one hotel and she's staying at another. People do that all the time, but even still, could I have mixed up the resort somehow? It was time to call Ellie. There was no answer. I left a message to call immediately and texted her the same message. There were chairs near the entrance, so I sat and waited for Ellie to call me back. About a half an hour later, I tried calling again, but again she didn't pick up. It was now approaching 7 p.m., and I was really starting to worry. I felt all I could do was sit in the hotel lobby and wait. Now this part is important. The lobby was to the side of the reception area, on the opposite side from the resort's front door. Across from the reception area were the hotel elevators. I was debating calling Ellie again, but glad I did not, because there she was. She walked off the elevator and headed towards the front door, away from where I was sitting. She was all dressed up. She had on a very tight short red dress that I had never seen. I was so shocked by the dress that I had missed that she was holding hands with a guy that I had never seen before. I didn't know what to do. I just watched them walk to the front door. Ellie affectionately bumped the guy in his arm with her shoulder and smiled to him. They stopped and kissed and continued walking, his hand on her, but toward the parking lot. Time to find out what the heck is going on. I got up and hurried to catch up. When I was about 10 feet behind them, I said hello, and they didn't hear me. I repeated the hello, and they turned to look at me. Ellie saw me, and she froze in complete horror. I walked up to the guy, stuck out my hand, and said hi. What's your name again? I guess it's a knee-jerk reaction. He shook my hand and told me his name. I gave my name and said I am her husband. He didn't know what to do. He looked at Ellie. I looked at Ellie's hand. She was wearing her wedding and engagement rings, so this piece of crap knew she was married. He was also wearing a wedding ring. Of course, birds of feather flock together. They both have something to lose. They get caught. They both have leverage on each other. Ellie said to me almost a whisper, "Phil, what are you doing here?" Not an interesting question, so I ignored her. A better question is what was she doing here? But I knew the answer to that one. I told her to have fun with her boyfriend. She and I were done and turned to go back to the reception desk. I was exhausted from the travel and worrying about Ellie. I needed a room to rest. So a lot of people would respond to this in a different way. I was just so freaking numb after everything. Ellie followed me with not even a glance at her boyfriend. Her lover called her name as a sort of a question, wanting to know what was going on. She ignored him, didn't even look at him, just grabbed my arm and told me she could explain. Could we talk, she asked. I shook her off, went up to the same woman at the desk, and asked for a room. Ellie followed me to the receptionist, trying to get me to talk the whole time. I just ignored her. The receptionist smiled at me and said she's glad I found my wife and she's been concerned. I told her that we couldn't find her because she was busy hooking up with her boyfriend. The receptionist looked Ellie in the eyes and shook her head in disgust, but didn't say anything. Okay, you want to talk about an awkward moment? I told the receptionist I needed a room again. She said they were completely booked. I got on my phone to search for hotels in the Santa Fe area and found a room at a hotel chain that I usually like when traveling. I booked it and Ellie was still by my side. There is nothing to talk about, sweetheart, I said to her. I then walked through the front door of the resort to go to my car. Ellie was following me, her boyfriend still standing around watching. He called her name again and stepped up toward Ellie. Ellie told him to screw off and walked around him, rushing after me to the parking lot. She said, "Phil, stop, we have to talk. I love you." "I'm sorry. I can explain." All lines I'm sure that you have all heard before. Hopefully you didn't hear them in my situation. I told her there was nothing to talk about. She could talk to my lawyer. Looking back at it now, it was kind of funny saying that to a lawyer. I walked to where my car was parked and I unlocked the doors with my key. I realized Ellie was getting into the car. I told her to get out. She refused, saying we have to talk. I told her that all her stuff, bags, clothes, and computer was still back at the resort and I wasn't coming back here. I hoped this would coax her out of the car. She said she didn't care about her things. She would just leave them, and she was coming with me and repeated that we have to talk. She needed to explain. She loved me. The guy didn't mean anything to her. I thought about going over to her door and dragging her out, but there were too many people, and as a lawyer I knew she would use it against me later in the divorce. I decided to pull out and drove to the hotel where I made the reservation. While we were driving, Ellie's phone rang. She looked at it and sent the call to voicemail. Another call almost immediately came through. I told her she better answer so she could make arrangement to hook up with her boyfriend later. She came to New Mexico to get laid. He might be her only chance. She better not piss him off. She said she'd never want to talk to him again, and she was blocking his phone number. She held up the phone to show me she blocked him. I thought, oh well, that makes everything better. We can just go over to the drive-thru McDonald's and get a quick snack and be on our way. We arrived at the hotel and Ellie followed me to the receptionist. I told him I booked a room for one. Ellie piped in that I was kidding. She was my wife and she'd be in the room too. She said something about being a lawyer and the hotel being legally obligated to provide her with a key to her husband's room. The guy got spooked and gave her a key as well. I didn't think that her statement was true, but really did not know. So we went up to the room. She started explaining and I got tired of listening to her. I cut her off, telling her she could explain to the judge. We were done. She said she understood I was angry, but she loved me. I felt like she was trying to Jedi mind trick me. If she said it enough, I would eventually believe it. She said that I should remember that regardless of how angry I was at her, she loved me and no one else. I told her to save it. There was a restaurant downstairs and I was hungry. I left the room and Ellie again followed. I asked the hostess for a table for one and Ellie cut me off and told the woman that I was kidding and we need a table for two. We must have looked like an odd couple. Ellie all dressed up for the night on the town in her tight red dress. Me in shorts and a t-shirt. We sat down and I ordered a big porterhouse steak. Ellie asked for water. I looked at her and said, "I guess you had enough sausage earlier in the night." She looked at me and said she was not going to let me go. "We can talk now or when I've calmed down and start acting like an adult." Until we talk, she wasn't going to let me out of her sight. She's willing to do anything to repair the injury she's done. Her marriage was the most important thing in her life. I asked her how important I was when she was sleeping with, what's his name? I finished my steak and paid the bill. I got up to leave and she got up right after me, following like a puppy. We made it back to the room and I asked Ellie where she was going to sleep. She pointed to the king bed. I told her she's not sleeping with me. She asked where I expected her to sleep and I said I didn't care. She could get her own room or sleep on the floor. She didn't look happy but said the chair would be okay. She asked if she could borrow a shirt to sleep in. I told her I didn't have any shirts with me that I no longer wanted. I would have to throw the shirt away or burn it if she put it on. She probably had too many diseases for me to safely wear anything she touched. She then took off the dress she was wearing. Sexy red underwear that I've never seen before were revealed. The underwear was so skimpy, I wonder why she bothered wearing anything at all. I asked her if she always bought lingerie to please her lovers. She looked down but didn't respond. She then apologized again. I washed, brushed my teeth, and got into bed. Ellie sat in the chair and tried to talk. I told her to shut up. I was trying to sleep. She started crying and repeated that she loved me and we needed to talk. I tried to sleep but tossed and turned all night. I heard Ellie crying in her chair. She wasn't getting much sleep either. In the morning, Ellie asked me what I was planning to do. I told her I'm going home and she should go back to her boyfriend. She said she never wants to talk or see him again. She didn't care about him. She wanted to be with me. She was coming home with me. The idea of spending 6+ hours trapped in a plane with her traveling home was more than I could bear. I started to repack my stuff, and Ellie decided this was a good time to take a shower. This was the first time that I felt that I could easily get away from her. So while she was in the shower, I packed Ellie's dress and shoes in my suitcase. I went through her pocketbook and took out her wallet containing her credit cards, driver's license, and some cash. I then thought, why not just take her pocketbook? I packed her pocketbook and everything in it into my bag. I had her driver's license, credit cards, cell phone, house and car keys, along with all her clothes. I went to get my toothbrush in the bathroom while Ellie was taking a shower. She cracked the shower curtain to see what I was up to. I held up the toothbrush and she went back to her shower. Her bras and panties were on the bathroom door hook. I decided to take the panties on the way out of the bathroom and pack them in my bag as well. She could keep her skippy bra. It might get cold later. She was left there but naked, with nothing. No identification, no way to pay for anything, and a bra. I left the room and checked out. I returned the car and got on the shuttle to the airport. I was able to change my tickets for a flight leaving Santa Fe for a flight in 2 hours. The phone calls from a Santa Fe number started as soon as I got in the car. I didn't answer but listened to a couple of the messages. It was Ellie from the phone in the hotel. She said she knew I was upset, but it wasn't right to leave her without any clothes and to take her credit cards and driver's license as well as her cell phone. Without her cell phone, she couldn't do anything. Without her driver's license, she wouldn't be able to get on a plane. Please come back with her stuff. We can talk and she'll explain everything. The next message was her telling me that I made my point. She knows I'm angry and disappointed in her, but it wasn't funny anymore. I should come back with her stuff. We can fly home together. She said despite her terrible behavior, she loved me. I smiled and turned off my phone. I couldn't imagine anything worse than 6 hours of being in a plane and in the airport with this woman. It would take Ellie a while to solve that problem, so I felt I would not have to worry about her just showing up. I finally arrived home after 11 p.m. I did some research on my laptop on the plane about divorce in my state. We're in a no-fault divorce state, of course. Too bad I wouldn't be able to use her adultery in my divorce. I turned on my phone when I arrived to my home airport. There were 22 messages from Ellie. I smiled and I didn't listen to any of them. I went to bed and was able to get some sleep. The next day was Sunday and the messages from Ellie stopped. Maybe she was arrested for not being able to pay for the hotel room. I could imagine her being led out of the hotel by the police wearing only her bra. Probably not gonna happen. They would probably give her something to cover herself up. I wonder if Ellie's getaway in Santa Fe was living up to her expectations. On Monday, I called the attorney my father had used for years for his business. I asked my father years ago to switch attorneys and use Ellie. I asked after Ellie and I started to live together. He said nope. Bad idea. Keep business and personal separate. He liked the guy he used all these years. So I called his attorney and explained the situation. He transferred me to this guy who handles family law in his law firm. Ellie knocked on the door a little bit after 7 p.m. Tuesday night. She was not only wearing a bra. I had her key, so she couldn't unlock the door. I opened the door and asked what she wanted. She pushed past me and entered. She told me I was an ass for taking all her stuff and leaving her in Santa Fe. But she understood I was angry and I got my revenge. Could we talk now? I was curious about how she got out of the hotel room and got home, so I asked her. She said the cleaning lady came to clean the room eventually. The maid said that she thought we checked out. I asked, was the maid surprised to see Ellie was just wearing a bra? She said there were hotel robes in the closet. Ellie called the front desk and told them she wanted to keep the room for another few days. She told them to use the credit card they have on file. The hotel told her she could stay as she was registered to the room and her name along with mine was on the credit card. She had come down to sign and had to walk around in the hotel wearing nothing but the robe. People thought she was going to the pool or spa. I've seen people walking around in robes in hotels. Since I wouldn't return her calls, she called her sister Karen. Karen lived in the suburbs of our city with her husband and 2 children. Elliot decided to go to law school after college and Karen found the one she wanted to marry. They waited to have their first child until 2020. Ellie and Karen are identical twins. This is a major plot issue for this story. It was even hard for me to tell them apart. I knew which one was which when they were together. Ellie's face was a little rounder, Karen's face longer. I thought Ellie was a bit prettier, but when they were apart it had been impossible to tell who was who. They could always pass for one another and still could. It was not only their faces. Both were gym rats and stayed in shape. Karen started to change her hair color after her first child was born, so after 2020 it was easier to tell them apart. Before that, Ellie and Karen were truly identical. After we had been dating a while, I asked Ellie what it was like being a twin. She told me some entertaining stories. Ellie said there were some advantages to being a twin. Ellie told me that when they were in high school, both Ellie and Karen played a game with their boyfriends. Ellie and Karen thought it was fun to switch boyfriends occasionally, without them knowing. Ellie would go out with Karen's boyfriends without telling him who she was, and Karen did the same with Ellie's boyfriends. It was exciting. They never knew if they'd been caught. I asked Ellie if she had ever slept with Karen's boyfriends. She blushed and thought about whether to tell me the truth or not. She finally said that Karen was sleeping with Ellie's guys, so she did the same. She said they continued the game, but to a lesser extent in college. Ellie went to college in the same state. They thought it was fun deceiving the clueless guys, but of course this stopped once they met the guys they married. Right? She told me the guys never guessed the truth. They compared the guys since they both had intimate time with them. They had intimate knowledge of their strengths and weaknesses in bed. She left and said they were pretty wild as teenagers, but all that was ancient history. I asked if I'd ever slept with Karen without knowing it. She blushed, but told me of course not. That's crazy, right? We only did that back in high school and in college, but not to the men we love. I was her true love, and she wasn't going to share me. She then looked at me as to see if I believed her. I had my doubts if she was telling the truth. There were times when I felt things were off when I was with Ellie. Things that Ellie should remember but didn't. I then asked Ellie if she ever slept with Karen's husband. She said of course not. Anyway, she called her sister Saturday after I left the hotel with her things. She explained the situation and asked her to overnight a credit card, Karen's driver's license, some cash, and clothes. She'd use Karen's driver's license to get on the plane and Karen's credit card to pay for things. Their hair was different than the picture ID, but it didn't matter. Women changed their hairstyles and color all the time. The face was the same. Ellie and Karen could even open each other's iPhones using facial recognition. Karen sent the package on Monday and Karen received it early Tuesday morning, early enough to get to the airport to begin her way home. I asked Ellie if she called her boyfriend. He had her clothes and laptop. She said he wasn't her boyfriend. To call him, that was to elevate him way too much. He was just a stupid fling. She said that she did not have his cell phone number and I had her phone. When she realized I wasn't coming back for her, she called the resort and asked for him. The resort said that he had already checked out. She asked if he left anything for her and gave her name. The woman at the resort told her to hold and came back and said they had a couple bags with her name on them. She asked when Ellie was going to come back to get them. She told them that she'd be in touch. She had no way to get the clothes. No way to even get back to the resort because she had no money or credit cards. I asked her how she ate and she said she used room service and put it on the credit card the hotel had on file. I told Ellie that I was seeing a divorce attorney the next day. We were divorcing. There was no possibility of reconciliation. She started crying and told me she was sorry, that she made a terrible mistake and would never do anything so foolish again. When she received clothes from her sister, Ellie even threw out the red bra because she didn't want to be reminded of her stupidity. She didn't want a divorce. She loved me and wants to spend the rest of her life making it up to me. She won't agree to divorce. She loves me too much. Could we just talk? It didn't matter to me how she asked and how long the affair had been going on with this guy. I was done. I did ask her if she ever did go to the meetings or were they just all excuses to hook up with her lover. She told me that she met the guy 6 or 7 years ago at a meeting. Say what? You've been cheating on me with this dude for 6 or 7 years. We've been married for 11. She said she only met the guy 6 or 7 years ago. He was also an attorney. They sat next to each other at lunch and talked. They continued to talk at dinner, and then she went in his hotel room. It was nothing serious. Oh, but it's been going on for 6 or 7 years, I said. Nothing serious. They didn't want anything more from the other person but the sex and a good time. He was married with children, and she was happily married. Neither was going to give up their marriage, but they met a few times a year at conferences or they met for weekends. It was nothing to her. She said just a vacation from life for a few days. She loved me, not him. She told me to not worry. She'll never see him again. I said to her, "Oh wow, that's a relief. Thank you." Of course, that was sarcasm. I said, "So you've been seeing this guy 3 or 4 times a year for years. It started before you were married and continued the whole time we've been married." She started crying again as she nodded yes. She said it didn't mean anything. She was just doing something for her. I yelled, "If you want to do something for you, go to the damn spa and get your nails done. Get a pedicure or manicure. You don't hook up with other guys. If that's what you want to do, we should not have gotten married." She said it wasn't because I didn't make her happy. The affair was exciting, but it wasn't really that important to her. She'd never do anything like that again. I asked if there were any other guys that she was hooking up with and she said no. I asked why I should believe her. She said she didn't want to and couldn't see men from her law firm. The firm really frowned on that, especially by someone who was married. If the firm found out, she'd be fired. She said there was just this guy. Okay, so you all heard it. She said there was only just this guy. That this is the only guy she's ever cheated on me with. Remember this. She said he pushed the right buttons when they first met, and she followed him back to his room as if it was his fault. He's like the Pied Piper of infidelity. She regrets all of it. She's so sorry and embarrassed, and she can't understand why she did this. That was the bad Ellie. That wasn't me. That was bad Ellie. She loved me and would make it up to me. She even understood why I left her without anything in Santa Fe, and she was no longer mad about that. She deserved to be punished. On some level, she was relieved that I was finally talking with her and asked if I had any more questions. I looked at my watch. It was just before 8:30 at night. I said, "Let's call the wife," and she looked alarmed. Why did I want to call the wife? I said to her, the guy's wife should know what a dirtbag she had for her husband. She said she didn't have his phone number or his wife's number. I told her you could find anything on the internet. She said telling the wife would destroy his marriage, and I replied, "He destroyed my marriage. Why would I be concerned about his?" I got her phone from the bedroom upstairs and my laptop. I asked for his full name again. She said this was wrong. I said wrong or not, she's telling the wife. She gave me his name and city where they lived. I found a cell phone number and it matched the one in Ellie's cell. I then found the wife and her cell. I told Ellie to call now and confess everything to the wife. Ellie said maybe we should just talk for now and said she could call the wife tomorrow if I still wanted. I told her to call her now if she ever wanted a chance of fixing things between us. In my head, there was no chance of us getting back together. She called, but the call went to voicemail and Ellie hung up. I told her to call again, and if it went to voicemail again, she should leave her name and number and tell the wife she had important information about her husband to please call back. The wife actually called back a few minutes later. I told her to put it on speaker. The wife didn't sound very happy. She asked Ellie what she knew about her husband. Ellie proceeded to say they've been meeting and sleeping together at weekend getaways or meetings for years. It was a long-lasting relationship, but they weren't in love or anything. She apologized to her and said it was over. The wife asked how many times they met. Ellie hesitated, closed her eyes, and said softly 2 or 3 times a year for 6 or 7 years now. I thought, I'm sure there's more going on here, but that was a lot. The wife asked if they met in the city where the wife and her husband lived. Ellie said no. They met at different places all over the country. The wife said it could not have been her husband that Ellie was talking about. Her husband only went to 1 meeting a year. He never traveled on his own more than once a year. Certainly never 3 or 4 times a year. Ellie was talking to the wrong wife. Ellie looked at me anxiously and then looked away. Ellie asked if her husband just got back from the meeting at Santa Fe, and the wife said yes. She said he came home early because he wasn't feeling well. Ellie said she had to go to the website and look at the conference schedule. There wasn't a conference this past weekend. There she could also call the resort to see if they hosted a meeting. If the wife still doesn't believe Ellie, she can send her text communications with her husband. The wife said that she'd check and call back if she had more questions. We never heard from her again. I don't know if the husband tried to call Ellie. I checked Ellie's phone and he was still blocked. I said to Ellie, so this guy was meeting you once a year, but you were going to 3 or 4 meetings a year. Who else are you screwing? She said the wife was confused or gaslighting, wanting to avoid admitting it was her husband. Your nose is growing, Pinocchio, I said. We met more than once a year. She didn't know why the wife was lying. I asked her who else. She put her hands over her face and really started crying. I waited a bit and asked her again. Who else? She just continued to cry. I told her she needed to be completely honest with me or I'd move out and I've never talked to her again. You can communicate through my lawyers. She said, please don't leave her. She couldn't live without me. What she did was horrible, but we shouldn't let it ruin our lives or ruin our love. She's ready to do anything. She loved me and we can get through this if we try. She said I understood that most of the work had to be done by her. She was ready to do anything. I told her unless she was completely honest with me, unless I believe what she tells me, I'm leaving tonight. Ellie said she would tell me what I wanted to know. I said to her, you admitted before, you were going to tell me everything that I wanted to know earlier, and you neglected to mention that you're hooking up with multiple dudes around the country instead of this one clown. Ellie said that she met guys at different conferences over the years and she continued to meet some of them for weekend getaways. She also met guys in our city. None of them lasted very long. She told me when she was traveling for a conference, she was really here at a local hotel for the weekend. She was so sorry. She realized that something was seriously wrong with her. She needed help and she'd find a therapist immediately. I was blown away. No pun intended. How did she even manage this? How had I been so in the dark? Again, she said she loved me and she didn't care about any of the other guys. I asked her how many guys. She said she really didn't know. I asked her if she slept with anybody that I knew. She hesitated and said it wasn't important and her craziness was all in the past. No, honey, your craziness is right here front and center. I asked her again if there was anybody I knew. She was crying so hard now that she couldn't talk. I waited. I wasn't going to give up. She eventually said a couple guys from my company. I didn't think it was possible for me to get angrier. Now she's banging dudes that I work with in my father's business. I asked her who. She said it didn't matter. I told her I'm leaving. She said 2 younger techs who worked for me. She told me their names. She said that she was at the gym one Saturday and they came up to her and introduced themselves. They told her that they worked for me and they recognized her from when Ellie came to see me at work. They asked if she wanted to work out with them. She said they were brothers and seemed very nice. They were in terrific shape and maybe she could learn a new exercise from them. She said they kept complimenting her on her fitness and tight body. She said she learned a lot from them, so she invited them to lunch as a thank you. They went to lunch and then a hotel. I asked if she went with both of the guys to the hotel. She looked down crying and nodded yes. I asked her how many times. She said it was a regular Saturday thing for a few months, but that was well in the past. She hadn't seen them in a while. If I remember correctly, the brothers quit 6 or so months ago. They said they were moving back to their home state because their parents were getting old and needed them. I said that her sister Karen always worked out with her on Saturdays. Where was she while these guys were playing grab-ass with Ellie? She stopped crying and looked at me alarmed. She finally said I'd have to ask Karen. I said I was asking her. Ellie started crying again, and I asked if Karen was a part of their hotel fun, and she said yes. Karen rarely missed a Saturday. I said that I asked if they all did this together in the same hotel room, and she said yes. So the whole, my sister and I did that stuff in high school and college, swapping boyfriends and everything, that hasn't stopped. She said yes, they got a room with 2 queen beds. Ellie had sex with one brother while Karen had sex with the other, and then they switched guys. She said they hadn't done anything like this since college. Ellie told me she and Karen went shopping after the gym. It was Karen's break from being a mom. I looked at my watch, it was almost 9:30 p.m. Karen and her husband should still be up. I said, let's call Karen's husband. She stopped crying, her eyes wide open, and asked me what I intended to do. What do you think I intend to do? The same thing with the other guy's freaking wife. I said she's going to tell Karen's husband about Karen's Saturday escapades. I picked up her phone from the table and handed it out to her. She said she wasn't going to destroy Karen's marriage over some meaningless fun. Karen was her sister. Ellie couldn't destroy her life. They had children. It wasn't right, she said. If I wanted to leave over this, go ahead. She wasn't calling Karen's husband. She wasn't going to be responsible for ending Karen's marriage. Karen is responsible for ending Karen's marriage, I said. I got up and started towards the stairs. Ellie asked where I was going. I said to pack. I'm going to stay with my father. I told her it was something that he suggested that I could do after I told him about Ellie. Ellie looked horrified and asked if I really told my father about her. I said yep. He told me to toss you to the curb. He said you were a cancer. You will destroy me unless I rip you out. I started to climb the stairs and Ellie said, please don't leave. I told her she knows what she has to do and she said okay. I thought she'd better convince Karen's husband she was telling the truth. She called Karen's husband's phone. Again, I told her to put it on speaker. I sat next to her, and while Karen's husband answered, she made some small talk. Ellie building up her courage to tell him, and I said get to it. Ellie said she was calling because she needed to tell him something about Karen. Ellie continued as she and Karen had been sleeping with two guys for months after meeting up at the gym on Saturdays. She told him the two guys' names. The four of them went to the hotel after working out and Karen and Ellie had sex with them. I wonder if Karen was home during all this. Karen's husband asked why Ellie was telling him this. She told him I had found out and insisted Ellie tell him. I thought Karen's husband should know. She went on to tell him the name of the gym, the hotel that they went to, and approximately when it started and stopped. She also told him that they no longer saw the guys. Karen's husband said he always thought Ellie was cheating but never suspected his wife. He said you're both two pieces of crap and he hung up. As soon as she hung up, I told her to get out, we are divorcing. That's the end of part 1, everyone. Pretty crazy so far, but the worst is still to come. Please like and subscribe to the channel. It means so much to the TDG team. Thank you.